I have always had a fear of being ordinary. If my classmates' presentations were 5 minutes long, mine had to be 8 minutes. If my brother learned how to skate in a year, I had to learn in half a year. If the average person can hold their breath underwater for 60 seconds, I had to keep it until 70. It spiraled down, and it became an internalized thought that I had to be extraordinary to earn a spot on this earth. But taking a second to look at this mindset, it isn't rational at all. We aren't born to fearing being mediocre. This is what society tells us. This is a consequence of our environment. And seeing that while most people do end up being what the world labels average, as the word does indicate, individuals are practically set up for disappointment with this mindset. To reach fulfillment and happiness in life, you must be contemptuous with how you are and where you are. But always wanting to be extraordinary makes this state of mind incredibly difficult. So, where exactly does this thought come from in the first place? Because again, we are not born into thinking ordinary is not sufficient. My first answer will be the adult figures in our life. Teachers and parents are our first exposure to interactions, and what they say to us significantly influences our minds and how we differentiate the good and the bad. So, when I was awarded every time I did well in a competition, or when I got put in enrichment for being gifted, that told me I had to be better than others to get this prize or feel special. That to feel valued, I would have to be the best. Ordinary would not do. Second, pretty intuitively, there is a glorification of extraordinary people. In movies, ordinary people are portrayed as boring, underachieved, and usually have a mundane life. In contrast, the main character had to be somewhat extraordinary. Even if they had struggled throughout the plot, in the end, you see them achieving something that not an ordinary person could achieve, not to mention how they always get happy endings. For example, take this successful franchise, Harry Potter. Harry Potter was a wizard and was the most known, most famous wizard in the wizarding world. In other words, he was extraordinarily extraordinary. Many viewers, however, overlook the many horrors Harry had to endure and focus on his materialistic gains and achievements instead. This looks like his money, his fame, his many friends, how he was exceptionally talented, how he was conventionally attractive, and the list goes on. Those components I listed are what society glorifies as superior. So, when we get a shallow view of the other characters and an in depth view of the main character to whom we can usually relate, we all want to be like the latter. And again, seeing that the main characters are typically extraordinary, this leads us wanting to follow in their steps. Moreover, the rise of social media makes being extraordinary even more elevated. Social media is a pinnacle of influencers and celebrities, the most privileged, the most interesting, and the happiest. And despite everyone being told that social media is fake, how many actually think about this when they scroll through their Instagram feed, filled with conventionally attractive people traveling everywhere and meeting others? But even without this new 21st century glam, there will always be a societal narrative that upholds the 1% extraordinary. It is what makes capitalism and our competitive market thrive. We all want to be like those at the top, indirectly endorsing the elite and subconsciously pushing away the ordinary. A 9 to 5 job is viewed as inferior, and we all desire to follow the latest trends. Through this glorification and glamorization, it is rather apparent how undesirable the ordinary may appear. And although a 9 to 5 job may seem a lot more dreadful than living in a mansion, many of our desirable dreams don't happen and we are stuck with what we don't want. And being somewhat alright with the situation makes it a lot less dreadful. Capitalism wants people to hate their 9 to 5 office jobs so they continue to uphold the elite and the extraordinary. But on an individual basis, this doesn't lead anywhere. And third, we want to be seen and heard and validated. Beyond movies and social media, there is a biological narrative. It feels gratifying knowing someone is listening to us, someone is watching us, and someone is caring for us. Our ego relishes that. And through prominent adult figures, the movie characters, and celebrities, one realizes that one must be extraordinary to sense this degree of care. Simply put, this blasting thought that the ordinary is dreadful is detrimental for two main reasons. The first being how being extraordinary never actually happens, and the second is how it is very unfulfilling. First, it is merely a misleading, untrue expectation. Let's talk about the conceptualization of both words, ordinary and extraordinary. We can only conceptualize the meaning of both words through comparison. Google gives very vague definitions. And thus, without contrast, what is seen as better than others and others cannot be defined. Therefore, to deem one as extraordinary, one must have compared oneself to what is ordinary. And this is where the line between intentions appear. If you learn for the sake of learning or set goals for the sake of picking up new skills, that's wonderful. But putting yourself in a position to do things to validate as extraordinary over others is quite detrimental. So then, why is this unrealistic? Other than the intuitive fact that not everyone can be extraordinary, as otherwise that does become ordinary, there's another overbearing reason, and that is that happiness and your actualization of where you stand among others is relative. Even if one does become what one thinks exceptional and or extraordinary looks like, one will start setting higher expectations to become even more extraordinary and still labeling their current self as ordinary. And it worsens with the mindset that the ordinary is not enough, because then fulfillment is practically unattainable. So, always wanting to be extraordinary is a never ending chase that doesn't get upheld, because in this world, humans will always chase for more. Then this leads to the second idea, which is how chasing this expectation for the time being isn't super compelling either. Because sure, sometimes you may feel a surge of satisfaction because of an achievement that you may deem extraordinary, but this is symmetrical on either side. Because every time you don't feel extraordinary and feel ordinary instead, guilt swells up. I want to remind you that feeling ordinary comes from comparison and contrast to what you think extraordinary looks like. And it's very unfulfilling always being dissatisfied with your current situation and always thinking that you need to be more extraordinary to sense appreciation. I think it is an indirect self destruction that many individuals have to go through. Moreover, no one sees how troubling it is, which makes this thing even more dangerous. The societal norm is that extraordinary is good, that chasing the extraordinary is right, and society will praise all the materialistic achievements you're able to achieve. And so, the only way really to prevent this never ending chase of comparison is to desert a mindset that desires the extraordinary. Because with any expectation to be exceptional, it will slowly but surely escalate, stealing away happiness and fulfillment from individuals. So, what is the solution then? I think the first step is to redefine what ordinary means. Naturally, through the media we consume every day, making this shift in mindset will be challenging. However, we can control what we think and we have the will to do so. Instead of prioritizing being the best, start prioritizing your actions and thoughts towards yourself and others. This looks like taking time for yourself, spending time with your family and friends, and realizing that these ordinary actions are not as dreadful as society frames them to be. Moreover, you don't need to be extraordinary to feel valued or happy. Materialistic achievements should not make anyone any more memorable. Second, you should also create meaning in the present moment. With a mindset of always wanting to be extraordinary and always planning out your next step, one often forgets about what one is doing in the present. Perhaps it's slightly too ordinary. There is a lack of appreciation for your current self because the milestones you set continue to perpetuate the idea that you're currently not enough. And this is where balance is necessary because you can still strive for new goals, new ambitions, and new skills without obsessing over being better than others. Again, wanting to be extraordinary, which is an arbitrary concept, stems from comparison. The intention of what one does should come from a clear purpose for oneself rather than a milestone to surpass another. A shift to these intentions will also make these goals much more enjoyable, and there is a lot more room for fulfillment and happiness and a lot less guilt. Third, be mindful of what you say to others because what you say has a significant impact on yourself and the people around you. This looks like avoiding phrases such as you're so special or you're going places in a praising manner. These small phrases to value the extraordinary eventually turn into a thinking habit, upholding the narrative that you need to be exceptional to feel valued and ordinary should be feared and dreaded. Again, this is a very unreasonable and irrational fear. I would say the two contrasting conceptualizations rely on arbitrary comparison. I would say there is no such thing as ordinary nor extraordinary, and any dread would contribute to an unhappy life. Thank you.